Tonight our speaker hardly needs an introduction, but I just want to briefly mention that he's the director of great films as Silence of the Lambs, Philadelphia, Beloved, Married to the Mob, and the upcoming Dancing with Shiva, among others. He's a big fan of Hal Ashby. I just found out he was a friend also of Hal Ashby. And he's a great American director in his own right. Please welcome Jonathan Demme.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for that. Thanks a lot. Lincoln Center, Walter Reed Cinema, Harold and Maude, Valentine's Day. Can things get any cooler than that? Look, take a look around. Look around. This is. I'm curious. How many people have seen Harold and Maude? A lot. Okay, I'm sorry. How many people haven't seen? Oh, good. Oh, you're the lucky ones. This is. It's definitely a great American film, and I'm not going to talk about it because you're about to see it. I would like to talk a little bit about Hal, if I could, a filmmaker who I admire to the rafters, and a human who I love very much. This was his second movie. I won't do this too much more, but is there anyone who's never seen a film made by Hal Ashby? That this is their first time seeing one? Oh, good. Yes, really? Great way to start, and you're going to get addicted tonight. The thing that struck me when I watched this recently, to refresh my memory, was how the extraordinarily masterful direction for a filmmaker who's making his second film. It's ridiculous, just the high style and the freedom and the way everything comes together. And I was reminded in a way of when I saw Let There Be Blood recently, thinking, Paul Thomas Anderson is now clearly and arguably a masterful filmmaker. And but that's like Paul's sixth film. This is crazy how beautifully done it is. I got a phone call from Bud Cort yesterday, who of course plays Harold in the film. He had hoped to be here, but he's not. He's in California. He did talk to me quite a bit on the telephone about things he would like to have said here tonight. I have some notes that I'm going to go through. Very swiftly, I would just love to say, because again, I just think it's great. Hal is one of the giants. I'm not so sure he's etched as sharply as he ought to be at the moment. And there's even some, there's been some stuff written, and when people take a look at the films of the 70s and the 80s, and there's sort of that tragic Hal Ashby niche, which in that book that I really actually wound up hating because it dealt with Hal when it did, Raging Bulls and Easy Riders or whatever it was. Hal was a beautiful, full of life, amazing person. And I met him for the first time when I went out to California to make my first movie, which was a Roger Corman motorcycle movie. And there was a writer named Bob Rudelson who lived in London, and we were friends. And Hal Ashby was expecting to read a script that Bob had written. It was actually Fools, which was later made by a filmmaker other than Hal. But I hand-carried this script, and I took it up to Appian Way, where Hal Ashby's house was. And he was already a great hero to me from all of his previous films. And when I arrived to drop the script off, I was just thrilled to be there. I was like 22 or whatever I was. I was like, Hal Ashby's house. And I handed it, and the young woman who was in charge of things up front said, "Wait a second, I think Hal wants to say hi." I was like, "Oh my God!" So Hal Ashby came out, and he introduced himself. I asked why I was in California, and then he said, "I'm screening. I'm taking a look at this movie I'm editing on Thursday, and if you'd like to come to take a look at it." And I said, "Okay, great." So I couldn't believe this. So I go up to the screening room, and I sat down in this small screening room, and I'm sitting there, and someone sits down across the aisle from me, and I look over and it's Warren Beatty. And they now run Shampoo. And it was an amazing experience. Then I got a phone call from Hal Ashby, asking this young guy who had just come to town, "Well, what did you think?" And blah, blah, blah. This happened. I always got invited to a Hal Ashby thing, and he actually, came to some screenings that I had. And we crossed paths from time to time, and I saw him in New York once, and I remember I visited him at his hotel. I remember him sitting there, and he was sitting there on a sofa with his fist clenched, talking about how passionate he was about, and on the verge he was of being able to find a large amount of money that filmmakers could go to and make films the way they wanted to make them, and not to be put their heart and soul into these films and then have them formularized and plundered and reworked and thrown away by studios. And I couldn't believe, I didn't understand that passion. I remember thinking, gosh, it's really something. And he was fierce about that. And I think that, I know that later on when he had some of his films manipulated with, I know it hurt him tremendously. When I did a Stop Making Sense of Talking Heads concert movie, and I was out in California. We didn't have too much money to make it with, and Hal had made the great Rolling Stones concert film, and I called him up and asked if I could come see him for advice as to how to approach the editing on a film like that, because of course Hal, before becoming a director, was one of the great American editors. And he said, well, I'll tell you, I've just created this system, and we're still working the kinks out, but it's something we used for the Stones film, and if you want to use it, you can use it. What it was Hal had this is pre-Avid, it was pre-computerized editing. Hal had devised this system himself where, because they had done their film, they had filmed 3 performances with 12 cameras each, so they had 36 angles on every song. Hal created a system where he had these huge, and there were 3/4 inch decks, 36 3/4 inch decks brought into a room with 36 little projectors aimed at one wall, and all the other walls were these projectors. And he had it sunk up so that every deck had one of the cameras, and all these wires everywhere, and you'd hit a button, and suddenly all 36 angles were up on this wall. And it was what people are now doing on computers. We can do that on the Avids and stuff and get the multiple images up. But it was the first time this had ever been used. And Hal said, so go ahead and use this. It'll really help you shortcut. You don't have to look at everything and re-look and compare. You can see it all at once. And he let us use it, and he said, and when they called him up to make the deal with him for the rental and stuff, he said, oh, I'm not using it. You guys just go ahead and use it. And didn't charge us anything, which was a godsend. But